Today we'll be talking about the DJI O3 Air Unit and can it actually replace a real action camera. I'll be testing the Air Unit O3 against the GoPro Hero 11 Black and also against the Osmo Action 3 from DJI, and I'll leave it up to you to decide whether it's worth putting an action camera on your FPV drone from now on. Let's check it out. I'm sure most of you are mostly interested in the shots themselves, the ones from the GoPro Hero 11 Black, the ones from the Osmo Action 3, and finally the ones from the O3 Air Unit. So I'm going to roll them for you to decide which one you prefer the most. However, stay tuned for my thoughts afterwards because there are a couple of things that I want to share with you if you want to completely ditch action cameras in favor of the O3 Air Unit. Before we get any further with the video, I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, EcoFlow. In my hands, I have the EcoFlow River 2, which is a portable charging station, which is super handy to have, especially on a day like this, where you plan to spend a lot of time flying, a lot of time testing, and you need all of your gear with you. So whenever I'm outside and I'm planning to shoot a lot of content for you guys, I tend to bring a lot of gear with me. And as you know, this gear definitely needs to be recharged all the time because you go through batteries very quickly, and especially with FPV, it's never enough. So where this comes into play is allowing you to have that freedom and that peace of mind knowing that you can charge whatever you have with you, whatever gear you have with you in your backpack. You can have it topped up and charged at all times with all of these different inputs that you have. So we have AC, we have DC, we have 2 USB-A ports and 1 USB-C port, and this is all coming in a pretty small, portable, lightweight form factor that is pretty easy to carry around. Charging this power station takes just 1 hour from 0 to 100% when you're using an AC outlet, which makes it really easy and convenient to have it ready at all times with you when you're planning to go on a trip. The River 2 is rated to last you more than 3,000 times of full 100% cycles, which means that you can use this charging station every day for pretty much 10 years and you'll still be able to use it at its maximum capacity. As you've noticed, it's quite sunny today, so that's a perfect opportunity to keep this charging station topped up by using the solar panels from EcoFlow, which is another great addition that they have on their website. These solar panels are completely waterproof and dustproof, and they're quite durable as well. You can fold them and go to your next destination very quickly and easily. So as you can see, right now I'm charging 2 of my Mavic 3 batteries, 2 FPV batteries and my DJI RC, and I still have 1 USB-A port available. And that all happens while the charging station itself is being charged by the solar panels. Right now, EcoFlow is hosting their biggest Black Friday sale of the year, where you can get up to 50% discount on their website. Find out more information in the description box below. Thank you, EcoFlow, for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back into it.
Oh,
Now, the performance gains that you will feel after removing the action camera on top of your drone will be significant. The first thing you will notice is how light the drone feels, especially if you're flying on a 6S drone. It will feel incredibly light and more controllable instead of that sluggish feeling that you are getting with a big battery, let's say a 1300 or a 1500 milliamp hour battery, and a camera that weighs a lot. Like GoPro 10, GoPro 11, they are quite bulky. Even the Osmo Action 3 is still quite bulky and adds up to the total weight of the drone quite significantly. So it really makes a big difference when you are doing, let's say, a quick run through some obstacles. You will feel a lot more control when the drone is a lot more lighter. It feels like you have a lot more control, and just everything feels like you can really push the drone and make it go exactly where you want it to go. This is exactly the feeling that I got after flying a couple of batteries with a GoPro and then switching a couple of batteries to the Osmo Action 3 and then completely eliminating all of these action cameras and just relying on the drone itself. The next thing, which is quite important, especially in the FPV world, is redundancy. And that is the ability to have one more location where you're saving your footage on. Because sometimes, especially with FPV, things happen. Crashes happen, fail-safes happen, malfunctions with the electronics happen, and most of the times, unless it's a small crash, you might end up breaking something, which of course means that you might end up losing your footage as well. And if you have an action camera on top, at least you're having a little bit higher chance of salvaging that footage, unless you completely lose everything. But I've been in situations where I'm cracking the lens of my camera or I'm breaking one of the arms of my drone, and something bad happens to the drone itself. In that case, you might end up with corrupting the footage from the air unit. You might lose your entire footage that you have shot. For that, it's important to have redundancy, which means that you can rely on a second camera that records the same thing again on a second SD card, which is of course the action camera that you're putting on top of the drone. Some people will say, yeah, but it's just pointless to just risk it all for just that redundancy. I agree. To a big extent, I agree. However, for some shots, you just need to have that peace of mind, that security, that otherwise it's just putting all of your eggs in one basket and relying too much on a piece of equipment that is known to fail every now and then, especially when it comes to electronics, dust, water, crashing. All of these things really make a difference in the FPV world, so sometimes it's important to have a backup. So for that, having an action camera on top is the better choice. One of the things that I mentioned in the first video that I made for the O3 Air unit is the fact that I shot most of my first initial shots and impressions of the Air unit O3 in automatic camera settings, which I believe was a little bit of a mistake. I relied on the automatic camera settings a little bit too much, and in some shots it's easy to see that the camera is switching from one shutter speed to another. I kept the ISO limit low to 200 so I can avoid any grain in the footage itself. However, it's still not ideal when you're going for that cinematic look. If you just want to use the O3 Air unit as your action camera, it's really something that you want to avoid. That sudden change when you're going from a darker to a brighter spot and the shutter speed adjusts just doesn't look professional. So for that, it's important to use manual camera settings. And one mistake I made in that review video was the fact that I said there are no ND filters for this camera, which of course is not correct, because these are the ND filters for the DJI Avata. And since the Air Unit O3 uses the same camera as the Avata, of course, these filters also work on that camera as well. So that's my bad for giving you information that's not exactly correct. So I'm trying to repair the damage that I've done. And from now on, I will try to use manual camera settings, because I think it's going to be a lot better in the long run for those cinematic shots that, of course, you have a lot of freedom to play with, especially if you're shooting in cine-like color profile. That opens up a whole lot more opportunities to color grade your footage. And when you lock that shutter speed, this will be extremely handy to have. Another thing that I want to focus on is the camera parameters and the dynamic range that the action cameras have, as opposed to the ones that you can use on the O3 Air unit. Of course, it makes sense that the action cameras are far more superior when it comes to comparing them directly to the O3 Air unit, because they are meant to do that. They are meant to capture that action, whereas the O3 Air unit is made to do two things: record your footage and also give you that FPV feed. And of course, for that, right now we don't have 4K 24, we don't have 4K 30 frames per second. You have 4K 50 and 4K 60 frames per second as the settings that you can use for your footage. When you compare that to the Osmo Action 3 or the GoPro 11 or any other action camera, you have a lot more flexibility to choose your exact frame rate that you want to use, the exact resolution. You have a lot more freedom to play with those different settings. You have 4:3, you have 8:7 on the GoPro Hero 11 Black. You have all sorts of different aspect ratios, whereas on the O3 Air unit, you are stuck with 16:9 and you don't have that many settings that you can tweak to change the different types of video that you can record. Of course, we have to factor the price as well, and the Air Unit O3 is $229. However, that is just for one Air unit. If you have 5 quads and you want to equip them all with O3 Air units to suit your different needs, it's a lot more expensive, as opposed to having cheaper VTXs with one action camera that you can put on all of your 5 quads. It makes a little bit of a difference. For some people, it will make sense to upgrade to O3 Air unit on all of their quads. For others, it will be just on one. And for other groups of people, they will just never upgrade to it because it's far too expensive for what it is. So it's really up to you to decide which group you're in. Me personally, I'm probably going to upgrade all of my drones to the O3 Air unit just for that flight experience, which really makes up for the cost that I will have to pay. Finally, I think the biggest advantage of the O3 Air unit will be on smaller builds where you really need every possible gram shaved off. This will help you greatly to reduce that total weight of the quad. And also for some of the bigger drones, like I said, on a 7-inch quad, you can really get away without putting an action camera if you're going for a slow cinematic long-range flight. Also, the weight makes a big impact on the total performance of the drone. So I also plan to use the O3 Air unit on a 7-inch, for example, without an action camera on top of it, just so I can have more flight time, better performance. And for the stabilization, really doesn't matter that much, because for a long range flight you are flying in a different way as opposed to how you're flying for freestyle or for some closer cinematic proximity flights. But I want to hear from you guys. Which one was your favorite? What do you think was the best way to go when it comes to flying FPV? Whether it's cinematic flying, freestyle, long range, anything, let me know in the comment section below. I'm really interested to hear everything you have to say, so drop your thoughts down below in the comment section and I'll meet you there. With that being said, guys, this is everything I have for you today. Stay tuned for my next videos and subscribe if you don't want to miss them as they come out. This is Mike from Drone Supremacy. Thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.